Thank you, everybody, for joining us back here at the Crypto Companies channel for the first video of 2023. And as you guys can see, it is going to be a special one. It is also Friday the 13th, but I specifically am feeling quite lucky today, despite the connotations of Friday the 13th. Markets are looking pretty decent as well. We're joined here, of course, by co-founder and CEO of the crypto company, Mr. Ron Levy, Kris Bennett, the Chief Learning Officer of Blockchain Training Alliance, and three other really interesting gentlemen that I'm going to pass it off to Ron to introduce, friends of his. Ron, talking stick is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. And I thank you to everybody for joining today. The real purpose of this for all the people that are listening to it is we had one heck of a 2022 in the industry. And we've got 2023 just entering now. And I think most of us are optimistic, but do realize there still will be some potholes in the road. So just kind of wanted to banter about that.
So Edmond is with Eureka, UREEQA, and I've known Edmond for years, and his project is amazing. He's working with governments around the world in regard to digital rights management, all on the blockchain. You'll learn more about it, but it's pretty phenomenal project, and very glad you can join us here today, Edmond. Henry from Wave Financial. Most people in the industry know Wave Financial. Very significant investment company in blockchain and crypto. They have unique perspectives and unique ways in which they operate. And I would suggest that while a lot of companies were chasing big riches and ended up getting hit by some of the tidal waves that hit us in 2022, Wave Financial stayed on the right side of things. So I highly respect him for that. And I feel very fortunate. Again, I've known Henry for a very long time, but his schedule's really busy. So I really thank you for coming in here, and hopefully you have a great time. Ed Prado. Fantastic project. He's been on it for years. He is CEO of Rare, which is RAIR. Has some great use cases you're going to hear about, but he utilizes the blockchain and NFTs for videos and just about anything you can produce content wise. It's a gateway to it that is done in a manner that only the blockchain can do, and it's pretty phenomenal.
All right, gentlemen. So as Ron had mentioned to all of us here, 2022 is in the rear view mirror, so to speak. We can put a bow on it. I mean, it's kind of arbitrary that we're in a new year, but there was a lot that happened last year. And I would like to think we're entering 2023 kind of with a clean slate, as in the industry as a whole now has had a lot of negative players removed. And I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on that. Are you guys as optimistic about this year? Is there anything last year that really grabbed your attention or anything?
I'll jump on that. I'm very optimistic. I think there are a number of things that people have been waiting for from these types of technologies that we're using. And I'll just mention it generally when we apply things to blockchain, when we talk about finance. A lot of things that people have been looking for that we finally have in our hands, tools that we finally have in our hands. And a lot of these things have been used by folks who are playing around or looking for an ego boost. And now that's been peeled away in 2022. And we have serious players who have not paid attention to that hype, who are working very hard on projects that really mean something to various businesses, various parts of the world. It's exciting. I'm very, very positive about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at just this audience here. We got Ed and Edmond. I mean, nothing about what happened in 2022, really removes the need for good, solid, decentralized digital rights management, or the value of NFTs and collectibles and digital certifications, awards, that sort of thing. And I kind of think so much of this just goes in cycles. And folks like us, old enough to remember the internet coming around, they were very, very similar birthing pains at the end of, the IPO era, and a lot of folks kind of scratching their head and going, boy, is this really going to turn into anything useful? And once all that dust settled, we kind of ended up with the internet that we know today. So yeah, I would definitely second what Edmond said, and count me among the optimists for this year, certainly.
Yeah. If you've been through, a couple crypto cycles, you know that the winter is the best time to be building and investing. I mean, not only is it, there's a lot less distraction, but you also have just incredible access to people that you just can't even talk to during the bull cycle. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, have all experienced this as well. Your LinkedIn inbox is a mess. Your email inbox is a mess. Your Telegram is a mess. And for anybody who, is heavily involved, it's the same thing for all of them. But then in the winter, you start going to conferences, you start going to events. There's maybe 50% of the attendance if they're lucky, oftentimes a lot less. And it's all people who are passionate and who are dedicated and who are oftentimes the real movers and shakers in this space. So I love being in the space during the winter.
Amen. And I love to sort of add in there that everybody here I've known for years, probably through 2 cycles, and we're all still here because we're deep in the industry. We watch the industry, we have faith in the industry, and we invest our resources, whether it be the company resources or our personal resources, as in time and years. So we are certainly pro industry, but that doesn't mean we're blind to the pitfalls and the challenges.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I think it's important to note, despite everything that went wrong last year, I think you have to also look at what went right and what has really expanded. And what we've seen is a complete proliferation of this infrastructure. So if you look, we examined how many web wallets were issued. Ethereum web wallets are now at 200 million. There's 200 million web wallets out there. That's amazing. If you look at MetaMask, you look at the start of last year, it's really hard to onboard into MetaMask. Now you've got Apple Pay that integrates into it. You have PayPal, you have Stripe. So all of a sudden you're seeing this sort of thing that everybody pointed to as complicated and really annoying as much more user-friendly. And as you see the friction coming down, you're going to see the utility and the usage of all this going up. And I don't care what kind of negative story that the press has played, and it has been. It's been a tough year. And I agree with Henry, like, when tough things happen into a sort of a new technological vehicle, everybody doubts it. It's just like the internet, 2.0. We all lived that. I lived it, certainly. And all the naysayers and everyone asking me, well, why would you want to do banking on the internet? And then fast forward to now, and it's like, well, how could you not do banking on the internet? So I really want to point out to what the leaps and bounds we've made from an infrastructure and just a general sort of educational understanding of the blockchain, of Web3, of web wallets. I mean, your normal person now knows that you can own something digitally, which is way further than we were ever in 2020, 2021. And I think that's the important framework to go forward and make exciting projects. I mean, the press has done a good job of educating people on the whole NFT hype cycle and what it was and how exciting it was. And now a lot of people are like, wow, you can own something digitally. That's an important sort of starting point. And where we end up with that is all going to be about utility and what entrepreneurs like the people on this call make of it.
Agreed. Kind of the general gist I'm getting from a lot of you guys is that, yeah, obviously there was some big fireworks happening, but at the end of the day, the technologies grew pretty exponentially across the time. And kind of echoing, Henry, what you had said, I was even the feeling of at Bitcoin Miami, where I was at this year, there was plenty of those hype-based people and so on. I would argue not a lot of business even getting done versus just kind of like a powwow versus you go to Consensus in Austin. Things were, as you said, things pulled back a little bit. There was a lot of really interesting players there that may not have been shouting from the rooftops what's going on, but there was a lot of real progress being made. And last year had a lot of high points too. We could talk about the Ethereum merge going off without a hitch. And that was when you looked at everything else happening for the year. I know I was kind of like, well, anything could happen here, but it was really, it put a lot of confidence in Ethereum for me to see, oh, wow, it was like nothing happened. It went off without a hitch. You guys have any thoughts on that at all?
Oh, yeah.
When nothing happens, it doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
That's true.
I look at 2022 as like a huge de-risking event for crypto in general. And it's funny because I think most people would look at crypto right now and say, well, it's all risk, right? But when you look at those narratives leading with the merge, I mean, the merge is probably one of the biggest upgrades of a decentralized system underpinning hundreds of billions of dollars of value that's ever occurred, right? And it went off completely flawlessly without a single hitch. Absolutely incredible. But you also look at the things that are built on top of it, right? We've seen failure after failure after failure after failure in 2022 of the centralized crypto institutions that were financial institutions that were playing in this space. And what we didn't see were cascading failures through decentralized financial institutions. Nearly every single one of them, with obviously the exception of the Luna Terra ecosystem, which sparks the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you would think that DeFi sparking the entire 2022 meltdown would have also melted down the rest of DeFi, but it didn't. It stopped at Terra Luna, and every other major DeFi protocol continued to operate nominally, while Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, FTX. I mean, these weren't even like big players. All of the major players in centralized finance went down. Basically, the only guy left is Binance and Coinbase.
True.
Right? I mean, the vaunted digital currency group is even on the rocks now. It's been absolutely incredible to see that.
Yeah, you bring it up. So DCG, who you just mentioned, Henry, you know, I think that they got served on a lawsuit yesterday, or I might have that wrong, but there was some activity regarding the SEC and them yesterday. And I think that's going to be a large part of what's going to happen this year, is based on these headline getting failures of the centralized businesses in our industry. You know, the regulators are gonna get active. What that means at this point, I can't even say for sure, but it is certainly going to be part of the story for 23.
Yeah,
I
definitely agree.
think something that's critical to what Henry's talking about is the perception by folks that need to adopt. So that could be a business, that could be individuals, it's just a regular population, whatever the product is. We're in a different era now when we start looking at cycles and look at the news foundations that report on those cycles. We're in a whole nother era where we have a lot more news feeds, a lot more individuals talking about things. So there's a different kind of echo chamber. There are different megaphones, and it's going to change the perception. But I think we're stronger with these new technologies. We're stronger now than we've been ever in our financial history, in this country at least. I think globally, personally. And that's going to say a lot for adoption in the future. This year being critical. I think we're going to see exponential growth in a number of areas, be it the creative sector, be it the financial sector. Wherever you go, we're going to see some exponential growth by the end of the year. I really, really believe that.
Kris, you know, you're on the front line of educating a lot of these big enterprises in our company, and maybe you can speak a little about what you found over the, let's just say, the recent months, or what you're feeling on what education are they looking for now? Like, what perspective are they coming from that brings them to want to educate their personnel?
Yeah, it's really been interesting over the past just 2-3 years, watching this seismic shift in that audience. Like any new technology, initially, people's first question is, well, how does it work? What's actually going on behind the scenes? We did the same thing with the internet. You know, everyone wanted to know how the internet works. 30 years later, do any of us really know how it works? No, but we kind of moved on from that question, and now we're much more focused about, okay, what can we do with it? How can we extract value from it? What new avenues does this open up? And that's very much kind of the shift in conversation that's happening, at least in the enterprise space with blockchain right now. There's a lot less interest or focus on how does this work, and a lot more on, well, okay, how can we leverage it, or are we missing out? I think maybe one of the most underreported or ignored aspects of what happened last year is just the tremendous amount of mind share that this technology has gained in the mind of the average ordinary person. You can kind of see this. I've noticed this over the past 12 months or so. It used to be every time the word blockchain showed up in a news article, there was that obligatory paragraph where they tried to explain it. And it usually made folks like us cringe, you know, the kind of descriptions they would give. Those have started to disappear. And so you can tell, the editors and the tech journalists are now, comfortable with this idea that their audience, at least at a cursory level, understands it or is familiar with it. And that to me is very exciting. I think it backs up what the rest of this group has said, that we're likely to see some really interesting things get built on top of this technology and roll out, and probably some very creative approaches to solving the problem. Once there's a big failure or a big reset in a space like this, one of the great things is it kind of opens the floodgates in terms of creativity. You realize that, hey, they weren't necessarily doing it the right way. Maybe we can experiment and tweak the recipe a little bit. So, interesting to see that mature so quickly.
And Kris, there was something you had mentioned earlier where you said, like, essentially the fundamental demand for the things that blockchain can provide isn't going anywhere, and people are going to be seeking that. So it is a technology that is wanted. And in that same vein, I guess a lot of you gentlemen don't know, but in my role that I play, my professional role, I get to talk to a lot of different CEOs like Ron here, and I'm seeing more companies adopt blockchain technology for different non-speculatory use cases. Now, obviously, the speculatory use case is what everyone here is familiar with, and virtually and everyone watching would be familiar with as well. But there's plenty of use cases for blockchain technology that are not quite as what people would call sexy use cases, where people won't just be, again, shouting it from the rooftops or trying to get people to throw a bunch of money at it, so to speak, but still solving some fundamental problems. And I was curious, Kris, would you resonate with that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one use case we spend a lot of time talking about with students is what Walmart has done with blockchain. They've kind of very quietly gone and built out one of, if not the world's largest deployment of enterprise blockchain. They're using that to track the origin and provenance of a lot of the leafy green produce that they sell worldwide. And really the value they're getting out of it is food safety recalls are extremely expensive. Primarily because of the damage that can do to your brand and reputation. And that can take, years, sometimes decades to rebuild. So anything you can do to get out ahead of that, they see as a win. And I really kind of tip my hats to them, because I don't know about you guys, but I walk into the Walmart and I don't see, hey, we're using blockchain painted on the walls. It's not printed on the receipt. They're not bragging about it at the checkout line. They're just quietly delivering an improved customer experience. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the growth happen over the next few years. Kind of that piece of the iceberg that's underneath the water. It's not as glamorous. It's not as clickbaity, but we're just kind of very quietly going off and building a better version of the world. And I find that terribly fascinating.
And Michael, I think you described it well when I think you said the non-sexy solutions, which Kris just talked about that a little bit, but I think we got a couple real sexy solutions on this call, speaking really about Ed and Edmond both. Maybe one of you want to jump in. I certainly want to hit both of you. We will do that. Whoever wants to start, because I think you guys being here and taking the time, which I can't thank you enough, the value of that is because you both have real projects that do real things that maybe the users have to know about blockchain at this point, but it won't be long until they're just using and operating it. So whichever one of you wants to go first, just jump in.
Ed, jump for it.
I'll go for it. Yeah. Well, thank you for that great intro, Ron. I appreciate that. So I'm the CEO of Rare Technologies, and we've been around for almost 3 years now. And we started, it was real easy. We wanted to use what we believe is the best decentralized database in the world, which is the blockchain, to validate ownership. And if we can validate ownership, then we unlock experiences. And we really cut our teeth on videos. We felt that the videos were the low-hanging fruit, multimedia, videos, music, podcasts. So we built a very simple mechanism where an NFT would represent your ability to gain access to these venues. We check on the blockchain if you own the NFT, and if you do, then we provide an encrypted stream that plays, that's embedded basically on every browser and via your phone, be it your cell phone or your laptop or your desktop, and provides that experience. So we went down that path, and that was certainly exciting. We got some great projects, but we were very early to the market. And what we realized is the NFT hype cycle started, and we really represent utility, a utility that now everybody is looking for. I mean, the hype cycle, there was a lot of, rug pulls and a lot of, overly generous values that were placed on JPEGs and PFP projects that went nowhere. And now that everybody kind of understands the nuances in the game and the technology behind NFTs, which is just a serial number on the blockchain, people are now looking for utility. And by that, I mean, what else can you do with these NFTs? So we've really expanded, we've taken the opportunity to expand the model, and we're now in a position where we are blockchain infrastructure. And what we do is we validate ownership on the blockchain. And if we validate that ownership, we can unlock anything on the internet. And by anything, I mean, we can unlock a video, a podcast, a music, or we can basically unlock a Zoom video and provide a live Zoom meeting, or we can unlock SaaS platforms. We're working with some SaaS platforms that want some different tiers of services, and basically working with, replacing the antiquated username and password with an NFT and a smart contract. You can go in and basically create different tiers of services that before weren't necessarily easily available through an NFT. And it doesn't only have to be an NFT. We could also provide access to a video or a conference, per se, if you have any Ethereum in your wallet, or if you have Ethereum and Polygon in your wallet, or whatever kind of makeup of digital tokens or assets we require for access. So that's really what we've done. We've expanded this, and we've also, from a business side, really simplified it. It's now a SaaS platform where there's a setup fee, and then we basically charge, there's 3 tiers of services, and we basically charge every time we're providing this unlocked service that provides the experience. And we're working with some brands. There's over 150 major consumer brands that have issued NFTs, and are all looking for ways to sort of lever and monetize and create utility and more of a reason to own those. So that's what we've done, and we're really excited about it. And we see 2023 as a pivotal year because the first version of this is done. We have over 180 endpoint APIs that we've created, and we're working on a variety of really exciting projects that we are looking forward to launching.
Ed, can I simplify it for a second and tell me if I'm wrong, by the way? The way I've described, what one of the things you can do, you do so much more, but if I, as a CEO, let's say I had 1,000 employees, where I certainly do not, but let's say I had 1,000 employees, and I woke up this morning and wanted to record a 2-minute video and send it to 5 of my C-suite. I could send them an NFT each. So I can send out 5 NFTs, and I can put guidelines on it. So it's good for an hour a day,
Yep.
or 1 opening or 10 openings. And I could give 5 people access to that video. And if I want to go a step further, because maybe it's a very sensitive video, I can embed a QR code into that video. So even if one of those people filmed it off their screen, I would always know which NFT it came from, and I will always know who I sent that NFT to. Is that still?
That is all part of what we're doing. I mean, the great part about sort of marrying and merging the blockchain and DeFi with this traditional username and password access is that through an NFT, you can get very granular within the smart contract and create some incredible provisions that ultimately would be very hard to replicate in just kind of username and password entry into anything. I mean, you could basically programmatically create all sorts of bells and whistles, levers, and access codes within the smart contract that are automated. And that way, your executive team has the NFT. You don't even have to distribute the NFT every time you do a video. You can just have 5 NFTs in your C-suite's wallets, and then they can always access this content that is only for them. I mean, they're signing in with their bank account, and it'd be very hard to replicate that or to take that elsewhere. But yeah, that's very much in our wheelhouse and what we're doing.
I wanted to bring that out because NFTs for 2022 were about $69 million for a digital piece of art, and about the hype cycle of different animals, et cetera, et cetera. We needed that. That was great in that it got the ball rolling.
Yep.
But the real value of NFTs, in my estimation, is things like you're doing, right? It's really great. And I think with that, Edmond, you know, I think you touch on NFTs as well. If I'm wrong, certainly you're on blockchain. So another sort of real world use case, it's getting some great traction. So tell us a little bit about what Eureka is doing.
So Eureka is, we're focused on intellectual property rights protection and then monetization for those that own something that they wish to bring to market. That protection shows up in a few different ways. Where NFTs are concerned, what's interesting, and this has been wonderful listening to Ed. Ed and I have spoken at length about these things and what our two entities are doing. For us, if you take, for example, I'll give you two names, Roman Verotsko and Lucia Grossberger Morales. They are artists, and they're digital artists. They were involved in the beginning of that in the 80s, and they always were looking for a medium on which to display their work. So come to today, they are older artists. They are certainly the OGs of the digital art world, and they've been able to create NFTs and sell their work. Now, re-messaging, take the word NFT and call it a digital collectible. They're able to produce something that exists digitally that can be displayed on special screens. We've got screens now that will display beautiful art. So we work at making sure provenance is one of the things we do. And I'll start with this and we'll continue to move on. We work to make sure that provenance is proved, and we do that on blockchain. So we have a process that we call validation, and that becomes the core of all the other things that we present to the world. And it allows an artist to verify the work is theirs and everything about it. And that is contained in that smart contract, in that NFT. And the information that we gather, call it doing a forensic search. So we'll do the forensics, you know, early, before you have to go to court, before you get challenged, before somebody says you stole something or you say somebody else stole something. We've got all the information there for you in our package of proof, displayable on our provenance page for you on a website or a gallery website, however it's going to be done. And the customer can actually be very comfortable with the idea of grabbing a digital collectible from this particular artist. It helps separate the serious creators in that particular area from the ones that are playing around. So that's one thing that we do. When we get into the products that are involved for either a B2B or B2C, we've got this item called batch timestamp, and that is basic registration or claiming registration of your claim to your copyright on blockchain. It's really that straightforward. The second one is a creator rights registration, which is opportunity to register your claim to your copyright with supporting documentation, something that really has not been done in the past. You'll notice with Ed Sheeran and some of the other cases that have come up, these artists are now really scared of what goes on with folks that want to sue them and take advantage of not only the courts, but the insurance companies that wind up settling these things and paying money out to those that make a challenge. And so they're trying to document in every single way what they've done. There are still issues with documentation where dates can be changed and what have you. So what we offer is that ability to take all that material and put it on blockchain. So you've got a permanent record that can't be changed. And then people can move forward. If, let's say in a particular piece of music, if you're registering a version of it and you want to change and make another version, you just bring that information forward to the next iteration of the registration on blockchain. So it's a really good ledger of what goes on in the process of creation. Now, I'll wrap that into other parts of other industries. So we're talking to the insurance industry, law firms, and we've got really serious traction with them because there are a number of things that go on in the business processes that can use this particular application that I'm talking about. The before I get into a really interesting final one, I'll talk about the final product, which we call validation. So when we're dealing with those high-end artists, a lot of what we do is hands-on. So people bring us that stuff and we'll go ahead and do an analysis of it. This is what I was talking about earlier, but I didn't finish the description. So we do the work of analyzing what I talked about, doing that forensic study. We do a detailed analyzation of all that information, and then we hand that back to them. So that's the rest of the description about validation. Now, all that stuff informs what we can now do for governments with copyright innovation. Imagine that concept of taking the supporting documents and adding it to a copyright. That's not been done before. And there are challenges. I noticed in, for example, West Africa, there are challenges from governments. They're saying, listen, we have other cultures, other governments who are taking our creators' work and using it on television, in audio recordings, whatever. And we'd like to be able to document that these are our citizens doing this work. And we'd like to be able to prove this and gain some of that revenue back and gain that cultural, that cultural punch back, so that we can have people look at us for anything from partnerships in film or whatever to tourism. So we're able to provide now a product for these governments that's very interesting to them. It's something they've been looking for quite a long time. And again, I won't get into the countries that we're talking to because we have some announcements that will be coming out shortly. And I don't want to jump that, but we're getting traction. We're getting a lot of interest. So that's where we are with our products and what we're doing in the industries that we're serving.
Yeah, Edmond, similar to what, again, harkening back, Kris, you had said something very important about like the demand for these things are there. The current digital rights that exist in copywriting is not a smooth process. And as you had mentioned, it's rife with all sorts of issues. And I definitely think what you're doing is something that we could have used for a very long time. So I'm glad it's kind of coming into fruition now, especially as you had mentioned the corporate use case, you had talked about the governmental use case and the individual use case. We kind of live in this era now where creation is at every single person's fingertips. And there was a recent thing brought to my attention with, there's a lot of people who create something great, as in a lot of people appreciate it, and they didn't even realize they were doing it, especially on platforms people are familiar with now, like TikTok. Someone looks at the camera funny, makes a little funny voice, bam, 50 million views. And people have went to then copyright that and find that someone else had already copywritten their work from them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh man, and they're like, they don't understand the legal system, they don't know what they're supposed to do from here. And this is the kind of things where you're facing, here's old structures we had in place that were good for that time period, but now it's like the overflowing of ideas, the proliferation of things. Now it needs a new system, and it sounds like your system would work significantly better than the old one in that regard.
It does. It really does. And you make an interesting observation, because into the legal side, copyright exists from the minute you create something, right? But the claim to that is what's important. If somebody jumps your claim and then has enough evidence to prove that they have it in hand, that old concept, ownership is 9/10 of the law, that little joke that people like to throw around. It really is true in a lot of instances. So it's important that people have an efficient way to register their claims. And that's what we're creating. And creation now can change definition. I think people think of a creator as somebody who's an artist, filmmaker, musician, what have you. But you've got to look at code creation. Of course, books are included in that too. But we get into a lot of technical areas that are serving businesses that don't necessarily look like the film industry or the music industry. There's still a lot going on there that is technically creative. And so, yes, it's important for people to be able to make those claims, and that's what we do. We provide that platform to do that.
I think that's kind of why Ed and Edmond being here today is kind of really great. Those are two massive use cases. And my personal opinion is sort of now's your time. You guys started early. And I think 23 is going to be a great year for real projects. And I certainly include both the years in that description. But I am curious, jumping over to you, Henry, like, you've been in the space quite a long time, and Wave has been, growing and growing over the years. Last year was a very tough year for most funds. I'm not going to speak to how you guys did in 22. I'll let you do that in a word or a sentence without going deep or giving away trade secrets. But I am curious how this conversation, what it does for you as you're looking to 23 and where you'll potentially be investing and what you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the fact that we have two NFT infrastructure projects here, because NFTs are undoubtedly, I mean, they were one of the biggest stories of 21 and 2022, and they will undoubtedly continue to be, if not the biggest, then definitely one of the biggest. We continue to see just a ton of interest from both corporations and governments in adopting NFT technologies. And so the build out of that infrastructure, I think it's just so important to continue to push forward retail adoption and familiarity with blockchain technology. We talked earlier about how, onboarding to MetaMask is so easy now. And it's funny how, as any sort of a technology like blockchain progresses in global adoption, it's just like all of these things that we think about and we spend so much time perfecting and explaining and evangelizing sort of fade into the background, right? And people stop caring about, what does that mean that it's an NFT? What does it mean that's on the blockchain? Yada, yada, yada. It's just that, well, your ownership is protected, right? Your royalties are protected, your data is protected, and that's all that matters. So that's one sector where, we continue to look very closely at deploying capital. We have an NFT fund, which has always had kind of a dual mandate, where on one side they buy, a bunch of NFTs, and it has a pretty great collection of, some very, very high quality pieces of art. Of course, quality is subjective, right? But it also makes a lot of infrastructure and VC plays as well. And then we have a separate VC fund, which is also invested alongside the NFT fund in a number of NFT projects. Also, not typically NFT art, but much more focused on the infrastructure, VC plays. In my role as head of DeFi, my goal is to move more and more of our operations into the decentralized finance space. The only money that we lost last year was lost to centralized counterparties. And every other, in 99% of the capital that we had deployed, we not only didn't lose money, but we made money. So, we moved very quickly to take off risk when it was warranted. We moved very cautiously to put risk back on when we felt that it was time. And it served us incredibly well. And, this is harkening back to a subject that we kind of talked about right at the beginning, but we were talking about how, if you've been through a couple cycles, you really sort of learn how to maneuver through a crypto winter. And I think that the overarching philosophy of crypto is survival, not just investment, but crypto itself, the blockchain itself, decentralized applications themselves. These are all things that will survive for the long term, that are effectively indestructible, right? And so it inculcates this mentality amongst those who have been through a couple cycles that you don't need to be the best investor on the block. You don't need to catch every high octane opportunity. You really just need to survive, stay in the market and survive. And so, we really, we take that to heart. And so, the products that we offer are typically not super high octane, really high risk, high alpha kind of bets, because those invariably blow up. What we do is, we take your stable coins and we try to find, solid risk adjusted yields, right? If we can get 5, 10, 15, 20% yields on stable coins, we're very happy with that. we're not trying to get 50% or 100% or 1,000%. We'll let the other guys do that. We'll let them raise all the money, in the bull cycle, and then we'll let them blow up in the bear, and then we'll buy them. And that's what we've been super busy doing for the last year, is going around and buying up competitors or other companies in avenues that we want to expand into. We fought really hard for Voyager. Actually, we were basically the runner-up bid after Binance and FTX, and we continue to be in the market looking for other really attractive opportunities that we can acquire, because our balance sheet is strong, our business is strong, and we're just in a really good position.
Well, I don't know if you read the news as late as yesterday, but the SEC filed something against Binance.us taking Voyager.
Yeah,
so that deal's not done. Maybe you guys are still standing in line. I don't know, but
I know. Yeah, it's interesting. The bankruptcy judge approved it, but the SEC is against it. I heard the CFTC is against it. Several states have come out against it. So yeah, we're definitely staying close to our phones.
Fair enough. Well, then, Henry, I guess going back to you with Wave Financial there, that idea of guaranteed returns was kind of a nail in a coffin for a lot of people's, I don't want to say greed, but they were reaching pretty far in terms of people saying like guaranteed 50% returns in a year, guaranteed 100% returns in a year, and so on. And then the people kind of relying on very sound investment wisdom of, yeah, but where's the money coming from? How can you guarantee this? We're kind of shushed and kind of pushed out the door until I guess the the chicken came home to roost, so to speak. And I feel like there's a saying in there somewhere. I know that's not it, but the things did blow up as I guess everybody figured they would. And unfortunately, this is a lesson we've learned throughout time again and again, going back to the ideas of cycles. Do you think the competitors, the Wave Financial, kind of bit off more than they can chew in that regard as well?
Yeah, in some cases, I think that, this is something that I struggle with all the time, because I can't tell you how many clients I lost in 2020 and 2021, or potential clients that I lost, because I would go to them and I would present a portfolio proposal and I would say, look, here are the yields that we think that we can achieve right now. I can't guarantee these returns. I can't even guarantee these returns for the next 5 minutes, right? Like everything in this space changes constantly. And all I can tell you is this is what I think the risk of these investments is. And this is how I think I can do, this is how I think that they will continue to do in the future, but I cannot guarantee it. And there's a chance that we may make nothing on any of these, right? And they would take that very nuanced proposal and they would put it against something like a BlockFi or Vault or Nexo or whatever, which we're just saying we're going to give you 8%, right? It's just a black box and it spits out 8%, and you will never know how we achieve that 8%, but just give us your money and trust us. And it's a very difficult marketing tactic to fight against. And it just speaks to the human condition in many ways, right? I mean, that's something that I think everyone on this call and probably every person that we know deals with all the time when you're in any sort of a discussion, be it investment, politics, a geopolitical factor, whatever it is, right? Like if you're going to give a nuanced position versus somebody that's going to look at, a 5-point tweet thread, like they're just going to say, oh, this tweet thread, I get it, right? Like that's easy for me to digest. I'm just going to go with this. And that is the exact same battle that we fight in investing all the time. People don't care about the nuance. They don't want to know about the details. They don't want to know about what you're doing to get that yield. They just want you to give them a nice juicy number and shut up and go away.
There was a gentleman I met at Consensus, and he was a businessman from Venezuela named Andreas, and he had talked about people making a lot of things like that in terms of guarantee this and that. And he had said something that I thought was interesting. He said, the only thing that's guaranteed to happen if someone's guaranteeing returns is you're guaranteed to lose your money.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it. Any sort of a black box that promises you money, you're just going to lose that money.
Yeah, I think to add to that, anybody who's been in the financial markets, you hear that word guarantee, and it's the biggest red flag in my mind. I always search for it. Somebody tells me it's a guaranteed payout, I'm like, this is, I mean, just knowing the nuances, especially with new technology. And I'd have to imagine, Henry, that you guys are so well positioned because all these guys are faltering and all these guys are fraudsters, and you guys are set up in a pretty institutional manner. And you didn't use that word guarantee. And now you have a great opportunity to go back to those clients and say, look, you know, we're not going to promise you 50% returns because there are none. But there are some nuances in this market where we can go in and basically create some really good opportunities. And that's what this is all about. Like, people come to me all the time, like, well, how can I double my money with crypto? I'm like, you can't. Because ultimately, this is like anything else. And any kind of get rich quick scheme is just that. And people don't understand that. And then they're the first to tell you that crypto is a scam. Crypto's not a scam. The people that actually put a DeFi veneer on a TradFi company, they're the scam. And that's the real problem. And the media loves that. We're lumped into that now. And that's why we have absolutely zero to do with trading or crypto. And it's been a struggle with some of our investors because they think we are FTX, which is insane.
Yeah, Ed, you touched on a really interesting point, and Henry, you had touched on it too, in terms of the nuance and the things that we deal with. We can run anywhere. We can run into the blockchain technology everywhere, but we're still humans. And at the end of the day, you're going to find opportunists anywhere that will try to take advantage of it. And luckily, a lot of the things being put in place will eventually weed those out. And we have learned from these experiences at this point who the bad players are. And I guess that kind of wraps us back to the beginning of this. So now, that's kind of 2022 in a nutshell. We had talked about some of the things in 2023 that are kind of on the horizon. And I'm curious if there's anything for me, like, I'm kind of feeling this is the first time we're looking at, and I'm totally guessing, and I'm not Rasputin or anything in terms of guessing what the future brings, but I'm feeling this could be a pretty bright year for blockchain technology, the cryptocurrency markets as a whole, but also the kind of the world markets in general. The world's kind of in a different place than it's ever been in the existence of, even from the advent of Bitcoin, so to speak. And we're kind of still in, I would say, a recession. I mean, we've been kind of throwing different words around and where we are, but do you guys think that's going to play a huge role in this year for crypto? Do you feel like it's going to be inverse to that, or just give me your overall thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's impossible for any asset class currently to escape from the raising rate environment that we're in. I think that the major blowups in crypto are in the past, right? And that's not necessarily because for any reason other than there's not that much left to blow up. So, you know, it's like a natural fire break. I do think that, you know, leverage has just been wiped out in crypto. So like major crazy wicks downward are probably also in the past. You know, most of the weakest centralized institutions in crypto have already been washed out. So where we really need to look now is the macro economy, right? I think that's going to be a big driver. And if we start to see some sort of failures appearing in the larger economy, you know, we need to figure out how that could have blowback now on crypto. You know, inflation, of course, is still like the sort of the big question in everybody's mind. We think that we've reached peak inflation. Some people are thinking that we might be getting a little bit too complacent, and that we could see another spike upwards. I'm watching China very, very closely. I mean, China, factory of the world, their zero COVID policy, for better or worse, did manage to keep that factory running. Now that they have just absolutely widespread, massive infections, that could start to have, you know, create some supply chain issues in the first half of 2023, which then could have a knock-on effect on inflation. You know, if Europe doesn't figure out their natural gas issues, then they're going to be starting from zero in 2023, trying to refill their reserves for winter 2023. You know, that could have an issue for inflation. So I think it's too early to say that inflation is in the rearview mirror. And I think as long as the Fed is aware of that, which they are acutely aware of that, we're not going to see rates dropping. And the longer that rates remain high, the longer, the greater the potential for something in the real economy to break. Even now, if you look at mortgage rates, I mean, it's virtually impossible for people to buy homes, because just the increase in rates alone, and the lack of really a correction in many housing markets, people are going to have to pay twice the monthly payment that they were going to have to make, 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So, that's a huge driver. If we start seeing, a major uptick, we already saw a major uptick in new homes that are just sitting around. If we start seeing a major uptick in existing housing stock, that can start to have problems as well. We start to have a major correction in home prices, that could have so many knock-on effects. And of course, there's also something that I'm always worried about. There's a lot of instability in the world. I mean, Brazil just had their January 6th event. We still have a war in Ukraine. The Middle East is not looking great, right? We just had huge upheaval in Iran. Saudi Arabia has a young, dynamic, and very aggressive leader. Those two are mortal enemies. What if he decides to consolidate, his grip on power by striking Iran in some way? There's significant flashpoint there. We have an incredibly hardcore right-wing government taking control in Israel. So we could see a flare-up of Palestinian-Israeli issues. There are just so many flashpoints, Taiwan and China. So, it's as the temperature gets turned up with high rates, weak economies and all of this stuff. And then we also have a lot of populists and a lot of demagogues. You look, there are just so many places where you could see that spark that could cascade us into a very negative environment.
For years, we've been talking about a decoupling of Bitcoin to, other assets like, USD or gold. And the decoupling has not happened. And I'm sure it will at some point. I don't know whether that point is tomorrow or 10 years from now or even longer. But most people in the industry have always talked about it, thinking it would happen even till now. And it certainly has not. People got real excited when Bitcoin went up a couple percent over the last 24 hours. I love to see that as well. And really, for me, Bitcoin is just the barometer of that part of the industry, which is very important, make no mistake. And I think there's some great use cases for it, but it's relevant for all of us that are in the industry as to what happens with Bitcoin. But the projects like Ed's and Edmond's that we discussed earlier, those are the things that are the magic. That's really the use case of blockchain itself that is going to survive and thrive. And I absolutely believe that. And I can say, I don't know if it'd be proper to name which agencies, but we're training multiple government agencies right now that can use blockchain technologies in different ways. So even if it might not be starting at the regulatory levels, on the use case levels, make no mistake, the government, and Kris, you certainly correct me if I'm wrong, it's not some big concerted effort. It's just, wow, it seems to work over here. Let's explore this and maybe utilize it, right? Which is not a celebration of crypto or anything else. It's just the technology itself. Kris, I don't know if you want to dovetail onto that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. My background before I got into education, I spent a couple decades in IT services consulting. And, one thing I've noticed in the world of technology is, our cycles are almost the inverse of what you see in the larger economy, in that, when we go into recession, when times are lean and things are tough, that's where efficiency and improvement and innovation really matters. That can be the lifeblood to keep an organization going. When times are happy and you're in the black and you're making money, efficiency tends not to be such a big concern. I'm not an insider. I can only speculate, but I would be willing to bet there are a lot more conversations about system modernization taking place at Southwest Airlines today than there were a month ago. So I again, am kind of optimistic in terms of just adoption of the overall technology. And we've seen this, whether we want to classify where we're at right now as a recession or not, that seems to be a very active debate. But, one of the bylines we've been hearing is, hey, if this is a recession, it's unique in the fact that it tends to be hitting the IT and the white collar sector a little bit harder than previous recessions. And we've certainly seen massive layoffs in the tech industry. I can tell you, go onto a site like LinkedIn, put in blockchain in a keyword for your job search, and you are just seeing that number go up every single day. It is not unusual to run a search like that and see 8, 9, 10,000 plus positions being posted in a 24-hour period. So if there is a winter taking place in the tech world, I think we're that sunny little enclave. And so I'm excited that that's going to get more people in tech and out of tech, just broadly interested in blockchain and all the ancillary technologies that go along with it. And I think, the products, the services built on technology, what Edmond and Ed are doing, it just really kind of strengthens the use case for adopting some of that technology and bringing that ability into the organization as well. So I'm excited. I think if we have a conversation like this in 12 months time, we're going to be talking about a lot of new and cool stuff that didn't exist back in January.
Kris, there was it's kind of a joke and it's kind of not. Something interesting that happens with blockchain is a lot of people get pulled in looking at the numbers of, oh, look at where Bitcoin's at, look at where it's gone, oh, where could it go from here? They end up buying that, and then they get sucked into the world of alternative ones, and then Ethereum's cool, and then they get sucked all the way down into the bottom. They're down to the bottom 500 or so in there, and they put things in and they lose 99.5% of the money, or they're stuck holding the bag in something. And then that was kind of the spark, and then they stick around, and then they're studying like, well, what can I do? Well, how can I learn, or how can I get more? And then they get turned into the communities, and all of these companies are always so interesting because the communities are so much more engaged than almost any other industry I've ever seen. And you get kind of sucked in, and then all of a sudden you're working in this industry now, and you had just kind of dabbled in, and all of a sudden now you're part of the gang. And it's usually when, I guess, people are no longer talking about Lamborghinis and stuff and start figuring out how to make progress, that's usually when the magic really happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a number of students who've shared that exact same story. Hey, I got interested in all this years ago, threw a little money at Bitcoin. I was hoping to make a few extra bucks a month and pay some of the bills, and learned about it. And I got this idea for a smart contract application, and didn't know how to code, so I started watching some YouTube videos. And hey, I never thought of myself as having this skill set or being this person, but now here I am, and I'm really excited about this new chapter and this opportunity that I get to pursue that, 6 months ago, I never envisioned someone like myself being able to do that. One of the great things about an area that's still so new is that the gatekeepers haven't had time to show up. No one's built the walls and told you, these kind of people can come in and these kind of people can't. And there's just so much white space still in this area that you can just kind of go find what interests you the most and plant your flag and become that expert. And I don't know for how much longer that window stays open, but it's a real magical time right now.
And well put, Michael. I mean, the community is everything in this case. In traditional business, we're used to kind of hanging on to ours, keeping our secrets close and edging out the person next to us. It's not really what happens here. Everybody seems to share all the information they have because the opportunity is far bigger than the amount of people that are in it. So we actually need more people in it, because the more that are in it, the bigger opportunity for everybody. And that is really unique after being in other industries. It's unique and exciting, and I want to use the word inclusive because I think it's fitting. It's very welcoming. And I don't care who you are or where you're from or any of the other badges we're used to wearing and being identified with. It just doesn't matter. Come one, come all. Let's build this thing out. And it's really kind of magical.
That's such a great point, Ron. I came from traditional finance, and it was rife with stories of guys who would walk into a competitor's office to shoot the shit and would read all of the documents on their desk upside down so they could steal their ideas, stuff like that. And coming into this space, it's just so refreshing. Everyone is open, everyone is accepting, and everyone is just happy to talk and shoot the shit and, you know, share ideas. Maybe I shouldn't be saying shoot the shit, I don't know. But they're happy to share ideas. And I think it gets back to that sort of like open source ethos that underpins a lot of crypto. You know, it's just like, you either have a good idea or you don't, you know. And if I have a good idea and you think you can do it better, then go ahead.
Yeah,
think it's
and I
amazing.
want to use the word blowhards, sort of blowhards, not invited. They're
Yeah.
actually gonna find their way out the door on their own. They're just,
Yeah.
no one has time for that or wants to associate with that. It's kind of a natural transition that happens.
I think it's fascinating to compare this to sort of the Web 2 movement back in like the late 90s. So I funded a company. We were the first to bring the capital markets, the bond market, to the internet. And I remember back then, everybody was into NDAs and, hey, if you want to share your business plan, I want like an NDA, and I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. And everything was funded by the top down. It was all the venture guys had all the power and all like the money and all like the triggers. And really, when you look at crypto, it's the opposite. It's bottom up. It's community. It's individuals. Institutions are just now starting to kind of wet their beak in this place. And a lot of that has to do with the infrastructure. It's just not structured in a way that they can massively get involved, which also sort of hurts us, because if you look at the volatility in the crypto market, a lot of that is based on, you know, it's still such a new asset class. There's still such small exposure on the institutional side, so you don't get a lot of support. Yet every time that the inflation is touched, it's like, oh, you know, sell Bitcoin. So I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of missing value in all of, you know, especially ETH and Bitcoin, that is basically just a matter of getting institutions involved. I mean, if we get just 1% investment from these institutions, just from a supply and demand standpoint, both assets will just soar incredibly. And that has everything to do with the infrastructure and the movement and just having a capability for these people to participate. And that's out there.
And frame it, we were at, I think the tops was approximately 3 trillion in valuations across all cryptos. And now we're just under 1 trillion rising, right? Which can turn in a minute, but that'll probably be news if and when we hit 1 trillion, which could be very shortly, which is great. But even going from 1 trillion back to the other top we had, which is 3 trillion, that's a huge increase, right? It's a really big deal. And based on your comments, Ed, I just want to reflect on Meta, right? We had Facebook, then we had Meta because of the word metaverse, right? Metaverse is built on the blockchain, and there's all kinds of reasons why the metaverse is going to be pretty sensational. When Facebook changed their name and went into it, for me, I don't know what your guys' reaction was. I kind of smiled because it felt like a winner take all mentality. We're going to be Meta. We're going to be the metaverse. And what was missing there is Meta isn't an it. It's not winner takes all. There's countless projects out there. Some are going to succeed wildly. Some are going to have minor success. Some are going to disappear. But it's not going to be a winner takes all. There's different use cases. There's different reasons. There's different blockchains. It's this whole thing. So when a company like that comes in, in my mind, no matter, you have to respect their size and their girth, but it's like you kind of still don't get it.
Yeah, it's like renaming a company Internet. I'm now Internet. I mean, that's how fruitless it is in my mind. Like, how dare you like take claim to all that? Like, you may be a sliver in that world, but you're not going to be the whole metaverse. Nobody's going to be the whole metaverse. Metaverse is just another avenue of connectivity to consumers. That's it. And there's nobody to lay claim to it.
Well put. Edmond, sounds like you want to chime in.
Well, Henry and Ron, you can speak to this much better than I can, but I think it's important to observe the mentality of these larger individuals and institutions that have been looking for opportunities to invest in some of these companies in the past. The structure's not there anymore. It's different. And they're coming in with the same plan, the same ideas for investing and controlling, and it just doesn't work because, as you described, this is a democratization of opportunity in a lot of ways. So somebody wants to build a project and really sustain it, as long as they have good business sense and good business practices, they have an opportunity to go out there and do that. And it doesn't matter the sector that they're building in, using blockchain, using the things attached to blockchain allow an opportunity for these smaller companies to survive and thrive if they're smart about it. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that.
I definitely agree. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this space is that at least in the, especially what I see in the DeFi side, it's kind of this like Cambrian explosion of innovation because there are no barriers to entry. And that obviously leads to a lot of negative effects. You know, there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of bad projects, there's not really, there's no regulations. But the ultimate result, the outcomes that come from that tend to be, first of all, really innovative ideas, but also innovative projects that iterate very quickly. They iterate very, very quickly towards optimal products. And it's just it's absolute competition. I mean, there is no such thing really as a moat right now in DeFi. Because if somebody has a good idea, you can fork that and improve it, and you better improve it, because if you don't improve it, you're going to fork it for no reason, because you're not going to be able to fight their network effects. But if you can figure out a really good improvement, if you can figure out a 5x, 10x improvement, you could take that idea and build something incredible with it. And it's interesting because you also start to see people developing cultural codes, right? Like somebody can fork something and then attack the old project in a vampire attack and try to steal all the liquidity. Or some people can fork the original project and make it a friendly fork and offer, 5% of the revenues in perpetuity back to the original project, which can create this really friendly kind of dynamic between you and, the original builders, and them being more than happy to support your success. And I just love to see that, continuing to these different cultures start to emerge and evolve.
Yeah. You mentioned the network effect and the forks that have happened. And that kind of reminds me of a lot of the survivorship bias in crypto too. It isn't like, I guess one of the biggest ones. We talk about being able to fork your ideas off of any of these with a hard fork. Almost everyone here is familiar with Dogecoin. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is the de facto meme coin of the space. And but did any of you guys know that it's actually a fork of Lucky Coin? And so not necessarily a fork of Bitcoin by any stretch of the imagination, but of one that nobody remembers much of anything about. So just when it comes to ideas of like, well, the space is going to go back up, Dogecoin will always be around. Don't necessarily believe that. Bitcoin has always stuck around, and I like that quite a bit. And I think its network effect, back to what you were saying, has made it king at this point, so to speak. And the network effect is one of the most powerful things in any business venture whatsoever. And it's what led to some languages dominating others, because if we all six here spoke a different language, as soon as two of us spoke the same language, that's the dominating one by far, and it increases the amount of productivity significantly higher. And as we sit in this the battlefield of ideas, so to speak, in the crypto space, in the blockchain space, the floodgates are open, I think, as in average people are now being able to share their ideas and actually get them implemented too. And that's really powerful. I think this space has mobilized a lot of potential and talent in people.
Let me so all of us have been in the industry for a long time, and time just seems to go on, and it's, part of your own life. But to frame it out properly, yesterday is a very significant day. Yesterday, 14 years ago, January 12th, 2009, was the first time that there was a crypto transfer of Bitcoin. And it was Hal Finney with Satoshi Nakamoto, which could be one and the same. There's an argument for that. I don't know. I'll never know. Unfortunately, Hal Finney, who was a bit of a genius cryptographer, passed away in 2014 from Lou Gehrig's disease. So we will never know. And maybe that's one of the reasons that the original tokens, original Bitcoins have never been spent. I don't know that either. But 14 years ago was not long ago. And if you think about that day 14 years ago, where someone transferred 10 Bitcoin that had no value at the time because they were not on any kind of place you can trade them, and they had no real value. But the first transfer was then. And you look how far we've come in that period of time. utilizing blockchains and even cryptocurrencies for that matter, and Bitcoin specifically, it's kind of an amazing trajectory. Don't know if I even want to think about what happens in the next 14 years for this, because it is certainly more of a snowball than a linear growth.
Well, Ron, if you take what you've just mentioned, something that I harp on, and you and I've talked about it a little bit, is where the development of blockchain is concerned, to go back in time. If we take a look at Estonia and their desire to become a digital country, right? A digital nation. There were a lot of bumps along the way. But a lot of people, because of the hype and the fun, have not necessarily talked out loud a lot about Ethereum and other blockchains next to KSI and Hyperledger and all the other ones that exist that are used in business and in government. And I think when we start to, if we go back a little bit, talk more about adoption, talk more about growth, and then go to your point about it's hard to even fathom what's going to happen over the next year or the next 14 years. I think we're going to see some amazing things happen because reality is beginning to set in. People are beginning to make the comparisons and realize what's the same and what's different. And they're bringing ideas forward and actual products forward and using them and innovating on them and innovating those things themselves.
So it's one reason I love catching up with Edmond, because with Eureka, he's literally working around the world with different governments. And I'm not going to say which governments are exactly what he's doing, but we do talk about Estonia a lot, right? And I know he just got back from, I'll just say, the continent of Africa and various countries within. And he's got this information that's just truly unbelievable. But Estonia is one you keep coming back to when you talk about it. And maybe without going too in depth, right? We don't want to go too crazy with it, but give us a really rough overview for those of us that have no idea what Estonia is doing when it comes to blockchain and digital.
Okay, so the really quick information on it is they've been very open about what they're doing, and they have a ton of stuff on YouTube. So they can literally on YouTube tell you, this is how we started, and we've done this, and we've done that. Finland and a couple of other countries got involved with them when they wanted to become digitally oriented in their storage of data and their interface with their citizens a number of years ago. They had a bad breach, I think it was in 1997. They had some serious problems, and they began to look at other security options. And fast forward, they're using this system called KSI, which is, people argue, well, that's not really a blockchain. But when we go in depth and start to really study these things, we do have a blockchain that's operating for this government. So then the ideas from Estonia can be, well, can a human being be an NFT? How do you interface? If I want to go to my doctor, I can take this thing that I am, this digital entity that I am within the system. I can turn on the information that the doctor needs to see. And if I leave that doctor and go to another one, I can turn that off and turn it on for the next one. So they're allowing citizens to control information more efficiently. To me, this is the idea of going from what Khan and Cerf had, with Web 1, and then we had Web 2, and finally coming to the idea of Web 3, which is really the philosophy of Web 1. So this is what, to me, Estonia is allowing its citizens to do, and allowing external individuals to do. If you want to be an interface, a working interface, a company that's working with the government of Estonia or working inside the borders, there are digital ways to become that thing, that person that's operating inside those borders. So that's a real general idea of what they're working on, what they're doing.
So when it comes to that type of thing, would you suggest that Estonia is the #1 country out front of adopting those types of use cases?
Yeah, I would, but with this little cautionary word, we don't know what we don't know. So we don't know what other countries have been developing. And indeed, there are little bits of information out there that I may not have read, for example. I know of Estonia because I've taken the time to study that, and I've looked at other countries, but why was Finland involved? What power do they have? What knowledge do they have? So we don't know what we don't know, but I'd say Estonia is at the forefront.
Amazing, amazing.
So, gentlemen, I'm curious. You guys are talking about looking ahead at things, and I think there's a significant amount of changes currently going on all the time. And I guess this is going to be a little off. So let me know if we want to dive into this or not, Ron. But I'm curious how you think AI in its current iteration, which I think is currently experiencing the same thing the NFTs went through starting, was it about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where it's just kind of getting a lot of attention right now, but it was always kind of already there and growing. And it's just now entering the public space, and it'll cool off way past this. But I'm curious how much you think that will come into play in terms of the things to come this year related to blockchain. For instance, one interesting use case, and Ron, I'm glad you mentioned the date and tied it into history of Bitcoin, is I had told it, give me every single, talking about one of these chat platforms, give me every single, for every month, give me a date related to crypto's history through all of time, so I have something I could make a video about. And it was able to spit it out instantly. And I'm curious if you guys have any other potential ideas in terms of how much this is going to affect things.
I mean, I'll touch on it briefly, and it's going to affect everybody and everything in blockchain, crypto, and anything else, and whoever else you are.
Yeah.
And it was first introduced to me about 90 days ago because it was just open sourced, like within 30 days of that. So we're talking October. I think I'm right. It's probably October of last year, so 4 months ago. And the gentleman that introduced it to me and gave me sort of a demonstration on what it was said, it's been in this first 90 days, he said, kind of we'll know what's going on. He said 90 days after that, the whole world's going to know. So when you talk about 14 years for Bitcoin adoption and blockchain adoption, this is going to happen much, much faster. What is happening with AI right now will boggle your mind. And I'm witnessing it every day now. And it's going to change every single industry. You know, I could write 1,000-word article just by saying, write an article about this, that, and the other, and I will get an article spit out that is uniquely mine, not plagiarized, that will have exactly what I wanted in it. And if I want to change it, I just make that command and it just changes it. That didn't exist before October. And when the world gets their hands on that, I can't even predict how it's going to change things, but it goes certainly blockchain and crypto, but far beyond that. Our whole way of being and our culture is just going to change. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I think it's taken off like wildfire. I mean, like Chat GPT has got to be like the biggest. Everybody I talk to is like, have you tried it? Are you doing it? And we have 10 full-time developers, and we have they have instituted a Slack channel to Chat GPT, and they're putting in there like experimental questions and what they got back and kind of creating nuances. You know, there are actually a lot of guardrails in Chat GPT where you ask it some sensitive questions and it comes back in a way that it's not really opining on anything. It's just kind of giving you, it's very fascinating the way they set this up.
But it responds to you in a courteous manner. It's saying, sorry, I don't really understand, or I don't know that, or I mean, it's like a conversation. But to your point, Ed, you can ask it to write code. I want a website that looks like this, write the code.
I think this is the first real consumer-friendly sort of demonstration of AI. I mean, I've always heard AI, everybody's about AI, but it's always in the background in some way. CRMs use it, SaaS, big platforms use it, Google uses it. But this isn't in your face. And I'll tell you, if I was Google, I'd be pretty concerned, because the other day I wanted to cook something and I basically asked ChatGPT for the recipe. I got one awesome recipe. I'd have to page through and figure it out. It was just bam, there it is. And that is like, that could be the Google killer. And Microsoft knows this. I think Microsoft just invested $1 billion into ChatGPT. They want to transition Bing into kind of a Chat GPT-esque sort of search engine, which makes a lot of sense. And this is going to impact everything. I mean, from kids writing papers at school to us writing blogs to we're doing this campaign right now for Rare, and we asked it to write 10 tweets about this, including emojis, and boom. And like they were probably 90% there. You had to tweak them a little bit, but it is amazing. This thing is amazing. And
what's crazy is the open source part. So like, Microsoft put all the money in it, but they own Chat GPT, but they don't own the technology. Technology you and I can grab right now and make iterations of it and fork it and do stuff. It's just a wide open world. How many here have not been on Chat GPT? Yes, I'm just curious. Henry, have you?
I've played around with it just a little bit.
Okay, Michael, have you?
Yeah, I've messed with ChatGPT, GPT-3, Stable Diffusion. You kind
That's
of
what I
name
thought.
it at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know Edmond has. Chris, have you?
I'm using it.
Yeah, it's actually teaching one of my classes right now. That's the only reason I do.
Hey, you'll put us out of business. Be careful. So
The level of
okay.
efficiency, that that tool brings, I won't get into details, but I'm using it. I mean, I learned about this how many weeks ago, Ron? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's become an integral part of what I do now. That just blows my mind when I sit there and think about it. But the efficiencies that it brings are amazing.
Yeah. It's crazy. A whole nother world.
Yeah, I do think it's going to help a lot in the in the blockchain space as well. There's a lot to be seen yet. There was some projects that were touting again back to NFTs. NFTs were around for quite a while before that wildfire caught on. I remember the first time I heard ERC 721 was before even, I think that's what they were calling them when I first heard about them, before the term NFT was even popular. And eventually it caught on like wildfire. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here. And I think there's a lot of hype to settle. A lot of this will kind of cool off. But right now, in terms of positive outlooks for the future, I think it's one of the positive things that's it's gonna be a wild year, even if it's just AI. You know what, Henry? If every other thing just goes into the absolute muck, AI is gonna make everything better. That's my bet.
Why don't we go around the world a little bit then? I mean, I've loved this. Thank you all for taking the time and everything. It's just kind of fascinating to get so many, and I'll use the term experts, people that are deep in it out of passion and love and business, that have different takes on it. But maybe we can go around the room a little bit and just kind of give your sort of, when I say 2023 predictions, feelings on what's going to really advance and what other problems may arise. And I'm certainly not going to start that. So Chris, I'll throw it at you.
I mean, I think coming out of last year, the lack of regulation and all the problems that caused is certainly forefront on everyone's mind. And one thing that investors, generally speaking, hate more than anything else is uncertainty. And you may feel how you feel about regulation, but I think any certainty and clarity we can add to the space, the more clarity that we can get in to the space, I think the greater investment we're going to see, investment that's going to drive the next wave of creation about the types of solutions we've been talking about today. So I'm hopeful that, again, if we have this conversation in 12 months, we're talking about a lot of really cool solutions that didn't exist back in January. And hopefully some of the clarity that's been brought to the space in 2023 will enable that.
I think we're going to see, and this is going to be an exciting time, is a slow separation between crypto and what is the blockchain technology. And I think we're going to start seeing instances, and I think we're already seeing this, where NFTs and blockchain and Web3 are implemented and the user doesn't even know about it. If you look at Starbucks, they have launched one of the biggest brand loyalty NFTs, and people don't even know it's an NFT. It's based on Polygon. It's called Odyssey. And that's the sort of thing that we're looking at, and it's filled with utility. And I think that those are the sort of themes that we're looking at. And we're really, excited that, the technology maybe can kind of part away from the crypto market itself, because being coupled with it it's been a struggle, frankly. And I agree with Kris. We're going to see much more regulation and infrastructure around the crypto asset, which will help actually in kind of removing the blockchain and this technology away from it. So that's what I'm saying.
I'm with Ed. I think the builds that are going on now and the longevity of projects that are serious is going to help decouple what we're doing. And Ed, we've had the same issue. People see blockchain and crypto as the same thing. I think there's going to be a division of those two things. I believe that you'll see NFTs take on, and it's already starting. I mean, you're seeing a comms strategy, if you will, communication strategy that's pushing the idea of digital collectibles, or they're calling them other things. They are tools that are being used by various businesses. So we'll see a change in attitude about those, greater adoption. And I think there's going to be another hype cycle, but it's not going to come from the individuals as it has before. It's not going to be something that is put forward by the press like it's been before. It's going to be the exuberance of investors that are serious. Those who say, I think I might have missed out. I don't want to stay out and be late. I need to jump in. I think that'll happen this year, and I think it's going to be wild.
Yeah, I'll give the I guess investment perspective here. Like I said earlier, I do think that most of the pain in crypto is in the past. I think we have kind of reached at least close to the bottom of our trough of disillusionment. So most of the people who are left are, like the people on this call, bright-eyed, optimistic, excited for the future, knowing that crypto is not going anywhere. I think the macro markets are probably a little bit earlier in that. I think a lot of people and economies might be expecting a softer landing than what we may see. And so I think that this presents an opportunity for crypto in 2023 because something breaks in the macro markets, that puts those markets into turmoil. I'm sure we'll have some knock-on effects in crypto, but I think crypto is going to lead us back out of the darkness. I think that, this core group of individuals who are building incredible projects in this space, that innovation is going to hit the market, and we're going to see a lot of people who are sick of all of the macro uncertainty move back into crypto, because when the rest of the world looks terrible, I mean, crypto's not going to look bad anymore, right? At worst, it'll just look the same. We'll be on an equal level of uncertainty, and at that point, it's like, well, why not just go into crypto? That's where all the action is. And I'm obviously saying that from a retail perspective, right? From our perspective, crypto is where you want to be. But yeah, so that's what I see. That's how I see it playing out probably over the next 12 to 18 months, is that pain hits and it drives a lot of people to crypto because that's where the innovation, that's where the excitement, that's where the driving force is.
Perfect. Ron?
Yeah, I'll tag on to that a little bit. So I think, in the winter, the crypto winter that hit, call it last July till now, and create a lot of problems. The fact is, there's still a lot of money coming in to companies that are building projects and products. So the underlying industry is still strong, and the top level stuff has certainly had some major shifts, without a doubt. And I think what we're going to see this year is projects that have real utility. We're going to get real traction. And Ed brought up Starbucks. I mean, they're fully involved. I happen to know of a couple of really large retailers that are working on a couple of very similar things that are going to happen. They're NFT based, they're blockchain based for sure. And whereas the idea of making money on trading cryptos brought a lot of people and a lot of money in the past years, the next mass adoption is going to be from, loyalty plays. Everybody wants to get in on that. And, I'm talking about everybody that walks up to a cash register to buy anything. And it's about simplifying the wallet experience, right? How do I get a wallet in a much easier way than we have in the past? Well, that's all happening now. And I would suggest the final solution isn't even there yet, but we're a heck of a lot closer. And when we get there, people are going to be owning NFTs without really thinking of NFTs. It's going to be a lot of that. When you get countries that start putting their trademarks and patent processes on the blockchain, it's just going to happen. And when these government agencies start utilizing more and more blockchain projects, I think that a lot of that's going to happen this year, and there will be an underlying very solid industry that will come to the surface that will get recognized, whether it's through the capital markets, through the media, or just through the mass public. So I see all that happening now, and it's only happening because of the chaos of the last 14 years. But it's kind of like the table is set right now. And I don't want to paint it like it's some explosion that's going to happen this month or next month, but I think you'll see that snowball start to really grow and be formidable in 2023. It will be a sort of dividing year into true industries that people will recognize from here on out.
Awesome, gentlemen. Kris, is there anything you want to add?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to see what the year brings. Like I said, when the rest of the economy is kind of sheltering down, hunkering down, trying to get out of the storm. Those are always the sunniest days for us in technology. So I think good times ahead.
Fair enough. Well, gentlemen, it's been a real pleasure talking to you all. It was great getting to meet you. Ron, thank you for gathering everybody here today. Anyone who's made it this far, if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to send them over to us. We will happily answer them as we will. Gentlemen, we'll have some links to the people in this video below. And for now, Ron, closing words from you.
Yes, Michael, thank you. And thank you so much. You always do such an incredible job. I really appreciate it. To all the rest of you on, I don't even want to call it a panel. We'll call it a roundtable. Just a group of friends that are deep in the industry and want to share. Thank you for bringing your brilliance. I really enjoyed it, and I hopefully all of you did too.